One of the most expensive and sought-after floor coverings in Japan is made from grass and mud, not precious wood, not marble, grass and mud. Yet many Japanese people say that no scent brings back childhood memories more than its smell. No scent feels more like home. It is called tatami. And to make a single mat covering less than 2 square meters, it takes nearly a year of growing grass and dozens of processing steps. So, how did something as simple as grass become a floor covering that the Japanese have treasured for more than 1,000 years? Tatami was not always something that ordinary people could use. First appearing around the 8th century, tatami began as a simple mat placed on wooden floors and was reserved exclusively for the imperial court and the aristocracy. Even the patterns on its fabric borders were strictly regulated according to social status. The wrong border could mean the wrong rank. It was not until the 15th century, when Japanese architecture began to change, that tatami started covering entire rooms instead of being used as individual mats. Over time, it spread from the nobility to merchants and eventually to ordinary households. By the Edo period, tatami had become such an important part of daily life that people used it to measure the size of their homes. Not in square meters, but in terms of a 6 tatami room or an 8 tatami room. But to understand why tatami has remained such a lasting part of Japanese culture, we need to start where it begins, in the flooded fields of Kumamoto Prefecture. In those flooded fields, farmers grow a special type of grass called Igusa. And nearly all of Japan's Igusa comes from a single place, Kumamoto Prefecture, located in the southern part of Kyushu. More than 90% of the country's domestic Igusa is grown there. Fertile alluvial soil and clean mountain water have created conditions that few other regions in Japan can match. Unlike rice or corn, Igusa is not grown from seeds. Farmers divide shoots from mature plants and transplant them into flooded fields in November. From that point, the grass takes about 9 months to mature, growing to nearly 5 feet tall while remaining thin and straight like giant green threads. Because the plants are so tall and slender, a single strong windstorm can flatten an entire field. To prevent this, farmers build networks of strings and support lines above the fields, keeping each stalk upright until harvest time arrives in late June. 9 months of care. 1 harvest each year. And once the grass is cut, it must be processed immediately, because the next step is the one that surprises almost everyone who hears about it for the first time. The first step after harvest looks fairly ordinary: cleaning. Freshly cut bundles of Igusa are passed through a high-pressure spraying system to wash away all the dirt and soil from the fields. But the next step is the one that almost nobody expects. Instead of allowing the grass to dry naturally, workers immerse the freshly washed Igusa bundles into a bath of clay mud. It sounds completely counterintuitive, but this is one of the most important parts of the entire process. The mud coats the surface and works its way into the natural gaps of the grass, making the fibers stronger and more durable during weaving while helping preserve the natural compounds responsible for tatami's distinctive aroma. The very scent that many Japanese people describe as the smell of home. After the mud treatment, the grass is transferred into industrial drying ovens where all remaining moisture is removed. This is also when its color begins to develop. Fresh Igusa, combined with clay mud and carefully controlled drying temperatures, produces the distinctive green color that instantly identifies a brand new tatami mat. At this point, the grass is dry, strong, and fragrant. But before it can become the surface of a tatami mat, it must first survive a strict selection process. Not every strand of Igusa makes it past the drying stage. Workers carefully sort the grass by hand, bundle by bundle. Any fibers that are too short, too thin, or show signs of damage are removed. Only those that meet strict standards for length, and thickness are allowed to move on to the weaving process. Each tatami surface is made from thousands of individual Igusa strands woven tightly together with jute or cotton threads that serve as the backing structure. A standard tatami mat is estimated to contain between 4,000 and 7,000 strands of Igusa. Once the weaving is complete, skilled craftsmen use sharp blades to trim the edges and inspect the surface to ensure it is perfectly uniform. At this stage, the woven surface is bright green and still carries the fresh scent of Igusa. But after a few months of use, that green color gradually fades into a golden straw shade. Many first-time owners assume this means the tatami is wearing out. Yet for many Japanese families, the golden color is not a sign of decline. It is a sign that time has left its mark on the mat. The surface is now complete. But a tatami mat cannot stand on its own without the layer hidden underneath. If the woven Igusa surface is what you see and smell, the core underneath is what you feel every time you step on a tatami mat. Traditional tatami cores are made from rice straw. Not just one layer, but many layers stacked by hand in alternating directions to create a perfectly flat base. The entire bundle is then compressed in a powerful press and tightly stitched together with horizontal ropes. The result is a core about 2 to 2.5 inches thick. Firm but not hard, with a natural springiness that no synthetic material has been able to fully replicate. That is exactly why tatami feels different from any other type of flooring. Not as hard as wood, not as soft as a mattress. Something in between, which many Japanese people simply describe as just right. Today, however, traditional straw cores are gradually disappearing from many workshops. To reduce cost and weight, some manufacturers now use polystyrene foam or plywood instead. Some modern tatami mats are only about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch thick, compared to the traditional 2 to 2.5 inches. More convenient. Less expensive. But as the straw is removed, part of what makes tatami unique disappears with it. And skilled craftsmen understand that better than anyone. Once the woven Igusa surface and the straw core are ready, the tatami craftsman begins the stage that no machine can completely replace. The craftsman stretches the woven surface over the core, carefully pulling each corner by hand to make sure there are no wrinkles or misalignments. The entire mat is then passed through a sewing machine to secure everything in place. Machines can handle the long, straight seams, but the corners and finishing details still rely on the skill of the craftsman. The final step is attaching fabric borders along the 2 shorter sides of the mat. In Japan, these borders are known as heri. At first glance, they may seem purely decorative, but they once carried much greater significance. In feudal Japan, the patterns on a tatami border were strictly regulated according to social status. Nobles had their own designs. Commoners had theirs. A single glance at a tatami mat could reveal who owned it. A skilled craftsman may spend 1 to 2 hours completing a single tatami mat. A traditional tatami is typically about 6 feet long and 3 feet wide. Its dimensions became so common that for centuries, the Japanese measured room size by the number of tatami mats rather than by square footage. But what truly makes tatami different is not its appearance. It is the way it interacts with the room, and with the people who live in it. Inside every strand of Igusa is a natural spongy core known in Japan as toshin. This structure creates countless tiny air pockets within the grass, and those air pockets are what make tatami behave very differently from almost any other type of flooring. When the air becomes humid, tatami absorbs moisture. When the air becomes dry, it releases moisture back into the room. The entire process happens naturally without electricity or machinery. Long before air conditioning existed, this was one of the factors that helped traditional Japanese homes remain more comfortable during the hot and humid summer months. But that is not all. Igusa can also absorb certain airborne pollutants, including formaldehyde and nitrogen dioxide. Substances commonly released by paint, adhesives, and new furniture. In other words, a tatami mat can serve as both a floor and a natural air filter. That is also one reason why many judo dojos in Japan still use tatami instead of synthetic rubber flooring. When someone falls, tatami absorbs impact in a more natural way, helping reduce injuries without the need for additional padding. Grass, mud, straw, and all of that is hidden inside. But there is one reality that few people realize. Tatami is disappearing from Japanese homes. For the previous generation, almost every Japanese household had at least one tatami room. Today, tatami accounts for only about 20% of flooring in newly built homes. Modern apartments are fitted with wood or vinyl flooring instead, faster to install, easier to clean. No special maintenance required. As demand declined, much of the market shifted to imported Igusa from China. It is less expensive, but its scent and quality are noticeably different from Kumamoto-grown Igusa. Authentic Japanese tatami now costs 2 to 3 times more than imported alternatives and is increasingly becoming a luxury item in its own homeland. And as demand falls, the entire production chain begins to shrink with it. In 1996, Japan produced nearly 27 million tatami mats. By 2024, that number had fallen to just about 1.4 million, a decline of 95% in less than 3 decades. The number of Igusa farmers in Kumamoto has dropped dramatically, while dozens of tatami workshops disappear every year. The irony is that part of what is keeping this craft alive now comes from outside Japan. Customers in the United States, Europe, and even the Middle East are placing more orders than ever before. To them, a tatami mat made from Kumamoto Igusa is not simply a floor covering. It is something far rarer than that. Tatami is still nothing more than grass, straw, and mud, just as it has been for centuries. What is changing is not tatami itself, but the way people live with it. And perhaps that is the most interesting part of its story. Sometimes, the things that slowly disappear from the places where they were born become the very things that the rest of the world begins to seek out. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and join us for more fascinating stories about the everyday objects that quietly shape our world. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.